Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Swede Rolls. I'm Chris.
I'm Toby.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Daniel.
Back again after probably 2 or 3 months now.
Yeah, sometime.
Yeah.
Wait, it's...
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. So last time you were here, Daniel, we talked a lot about World of Darkness. Correct?
Darkness.
And railroading, yeah. Darkness.
Darkness.
All that I see. And now we're going to sort of talk about another kind of darkness, which is Session Zero.
What, you mean the dark pit of creation?
dark about that?
I mean, on the first day, God created light.
Have you gained with me or Martin? I mean, it is a cesspool of darkness.
I've had you as a GM, and I've played with you. So yes.
Yes.
Essentially, we're going to talk about Session Zero, which is the birthplace of a campaign, right? And for those of you who don't know, Session Zero is kind of like a gaming lingo term that symbolizes what you do before you start playing. So Session Zero is kind of a loose definition of all the world building you do, the character creation you do, the team building you do.
Yeah.
And I think most people would agree that Session Zero is an extremely important part of any kind of role-playing campaign.
And if they don't agree, we don't care about
No,
that
they're
because
wrong.
we think that it seems really important.
I disagree.
And
I disagree with that.
people have their own different kind of rituals when it comes to Session Zero. But what it essentially boils down to is, and this is something we've talked about a lot, it boils down to finding a kind of common ground to play on so that everyone has this sort of similar kind of expectations on the campaign.
Session Zero is also not really a session.
No.
It's a very broad time span.
Exactly. It could
It's
be a
all from
continuous process.
an hour or 2 months.
Yeah.
If you really want to play the long
Oh,
game.
yeah. Absolutely. And Session Zero kind of never ends. If you want to keep building your characters and develop. So I guess it's all encompassing evil darkness that just swallows up your campaign. No, but I'm thinking, for example, that if we look at our Death Watch campaign, our Session Zero was not ideal when I'm looking back at it, because we kind of threw your characters in. None of you had sort of cooperated in creating your characters, and now you're thrown into the campaign and you're sort of finding your ground there, which is why I'm going to throw in some character development after this initial mission to sort of compensate. So I would still count that as sort of Session Zero.
Yeah, I would probably say that we players that are playing Overwatch, we haven't really
Death Watch.
Overwatch.
Yeah.
It's a better game. No, no, Death Watch. But we never really sat down to discuss what characters we're gonna play, because I finished the character the night before.
Oh yeah.
Because I was so busy doing other things.
Yeah.
So that is a classical, I would say, Session Zero thing, just to kind of either, as I recommend, just kind of creating the characters together, but not everyone likes that. But even if you just made it yourselves, you really, before the real campaign starts, you get all the player characters sitting down with the game master or storyteller and just talk about kind of a bit who they are, and just because if the campaign hasn't started yet, there's still a lot of mental acceptance for most players to actually still tweak or even outright change their character or concept, or just like, oh, I was thinking about hating this, and then just one of the players is going to play that. Whoa, oh, that's not a good thing.
No, that's a great thing.
It might be, but you might want a different dynamic between you two, or so you're still I would say
Testing the water.
very flexible.
That is actually one of the things I was thinking about making this character that I was gonna play. I was thinking of being a dark angel that hates psychers.
Ooh, that would have been a very interesting idea.
It's mostly that the dark angels hate psychers in general in the entire the faction. I guess.
The Death Watch faction.
Yeah. So that I was really wondering if I should play one of those, but then it was like, I probably want to make this a little bit easier.
But I think that that's both of those things are valid. On the one hand, it would, if you were to play a Dark Angel, and you told us in the beginning, we could have worked that into character development. But on the other hand, it might have also distracted from the mission at hand.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a give and take. And I mean, you can definitely change characters in between.
But Daniel, do you have any kind of, how do you like to have like a session zero or a pre-game?
Like use your Death Watch as an example for.
Yeah.
I mean, a session zero is, as you said, when the players and game masters sit down and decide what we're gonna play, like what game, where, how, when, in what direction you want to go. In Death Watch, you don't really need such a big session zero because, well, the boundaries are already set. You're gonna be a space marine, you're gonna fight aliens, and you're gonna be in this sect and cult. Do whatever you want because they will tell you how to care, when to care, and what to care. That is it. All the small things you do on the side, it's just that, it's on the side. But if you're going to start a new campaign where the world is fully open, then you're in those hours to months periods.
Yeah. Like one thing I always try to get out of my players, if I'm the storyteller, is some, at least one short-term goal and one long-term goal. To kind of see the long-term goal, kind of where are you as a person headed, and short-term goal like, so just to kind of ground you into reality. What are you doing right now?
Yeah.
All right. I tend to do a wee bit different. I like the players to have just a small goal in the beginning. They don't need anything else. Just a small goal to get them out of the building, just to start doing stuff. The big goal I found more rewarding is when the players play the game for a bit, a couple of sessions, and something grows out of it, and they feel like, damn, I want to do this. That is the goal I put my steam into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just immediately I want to just say that I feel the same as you, but I just want the player characters from the beginning to have their own long-term goal, just to make their lives kind of like they have, and then when they realize this, then they have to make the choice. I'm kind of obsessed with choices and storytelling, just to make the choice either to stick with their own goal or kind of just steer into the one you find.
And that's, I feel like that has a lot to do with player expectations too. Because if you're playing with a group that are fine with having their characters leave the group, for example, playing a new character, then I think you can go in with every character having their own short-term goal and like they're united for one single purpose, right? And then they can split up. Deathwatch, as you bring up, is a very good... I think actually, I don't know my own reasoning behind it, but I think I felt a bit like you said, Daniel, about
Slam, bam, here you go. Let's
yeah,
go.
exactly, because you've been recruited into Deathwatch. Whether you like it or not, you're going to work together. But I could have still done a lot more character development on the base before I sent you guys in. But for example, in your Eon campaign, Martin, when we had our knights traveling together, at one point or another...
You burned the house down.
Yes, well, I burned the house down. I killed your entire family. What's your point?
That was my long-term goal.
Yes, well, I'm
still
sorry.
hurts. You're not sorry. You're never sorry.
You didn't give me the handout showing that was your goal. I just acted on impulse.
You're evil, man.
This house, I don't like it.
Well, that's another point that actually goes through all this insanity is that when we tend to create characters and games, we tend to feel that the players, every NPC, everything, it is a real person. It's not just a set of goals. When I meant a short-term goal to get them out of the house, I have already factored in that, yes, they are real persons. They have some kind of bigger goal in mind, not just something that's in league with the main campaign.
Yeah, sure. So it's just... So you just don't make a template. This is who he is. I always think that you take these session series to ask questions about the background. Where are you coming from? And you take the session series to ask some questions. Where do you think you're heading? Yeah. So you get like a vector for each each character.
Absolutely.
The most important thing, really, for me, and when I'm trying to game master in a session zero, is not to ask really where do you want to go. It's more like what kind of character do you want to play? What do you want to get out of it? Do you want violence? Do you want business success? Do you want to find a big love? Do you want to get advancements in some things? Those things, so I can use them in the game later.
But isn't that also because your way of game mastering is very much malleable kind of a campaign where you adapt the setting to your players?
Yes, I've learned that lesson the hard way.
and you adapt it. You take these characters and you shape the story for them.
Of course, they're the players.
Yeah.
They're the main characters. And that's the most fun. If I try to bushwhack people right into my plot that no one cares about, it's just going to be boring.
But let's take a game like, for example, Death Watch. We're going back to that, which is interesting because...
Well, it's a good example.
Yeah.
I mean, me and Martin, we tend to have an open mind, but Death Watch is so set in its ways, and it should be. It's the perfect counterpoint.
Everyone is supposed to go towards this common goal, but the Death Watch book actually gives you a lot of options for character development within.
What, a bolt or a chainsaw?
No. Of course, now I really do get like a burning feeling to play a pacifist Death Watch campaign. I just want to do it.
Failure!
No, but the thing is, there's politics.
Heresy!
Yeah.
A lot of people think that Space Marines are above politics, for example. But politics is a matter. Because, for example, Space Wolves wouldn't get along with Blood Angels.
Incendiary grenades or no incendiary grenades?
Oh, come on!
Chain swords or chain axes, man. I mean, it's...
there's status in being in the Death Watch, for example. And
there is.
Your chapter might go, okay, you're going to work in the Death Watch for 50 years. You're going to make sure to learn as much as you can about this faction of Space Marines, or you're going to try to give us a specific amount of honor, so...
Yeah, and also, just a note, 50 years is not that much.
For Space Marine, no.
No, and I really do agree with you, Christian, and what I do think is that if the campaign is more narrow, you really do have to ask more detailed questions of your players, because as you say, if you have a Death Watch campaign, then it's a lot of Knights Templar, but from different knightly orders, which will have kind of the same but subtly different and ways how they do things, kind of different philosophical takes on the same agenda, and this will become very important when they interact with each other. So, but if you play a very much broader campaign, then it's not. I would say it's not as important. Then you want to, as you said, Daniel, have a little bit more vaguely, because it's not going to be as much about specifics.
Well, in the end, it's going to be specific, but not in the beginning or even in the middle. I mean, the players always go towards their goal, even if they don't realize it at the end. I mean, they always struggle for something. You never really know what, even as a game master. And when the players actually see some kind of light in the horizon, when you see the gleam in their eyes, like, we're going to have that thing. Then always as a game master, you sit down and think, all right, how can I use the things that they told me in session 0 to use that against them? Always against them, never before.
And that's a really important lesson. Like, as a GM myself, for example, I tend to forget NPCs that the characters have written in, for example. I tend to just kind of not consider them when I'm writing. And I think that's partly because I don't know that much about them. It's my control issues again.
Yes, because you want to implement your NPCs and not anyone else.
That it's not a conscious decision.
He's a game master. He can do that.
I don't do it out of malice.
It's absolutely true. If he's a game master, he can absolutely do that.
And he does it out of malice.
Yes, of course. I'm an evil person.
Now,
but I think it's hard to keep that in mind. But I think it's remedied if you have the players actively reminding the GM. I go to my parents, or I call my friend, or I apply for a job at the company I have a contact with. I think players have to be very proactive. It's the same with merits and flaws, for example. If you have the flaw that you're like a disease carrier in Vampire the Masquerade, the game master is supposed to keep track of 3 to 5 people and everything on their sheet. Remind the GM.
I think you put your finger on a very important point, Christian. It's truly a cooperative effort. You might have you might be the figure of steering, but in the campaign, but every player does have their own responsibility to kind of add to the campaign.
Everybody has to help ship in some information.
Indeed.
But on the other hand, I also think that it's unfair for the GM to not communicate this as well. It's important that the GM builds this kind of trust with the group, and that's extremely hard with a new group, for example.
Oh yes, if you don't know the people, it's kind of hard.
Yeah,
it's kind of because you don't know the boundaries of.
No, exactly.
If someone's new to the group, they don't really know how to make new or like have NPCs that they know in the game,
and the best way to remedy that is a session 0.
Yes,
and just game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I think I'm going to use an example for something called Apocalypse World, which I mentioned briefly to Martin. It's a new kind of role-playing system that I got very recently. I haven't played it, but it has a very interesting built-in system. First of all, you progress through the book as you progress through the game. You don't have to read the whole book before you play the game, which is amazing. And the game master is called the Master of Ceremony. But the important thing is that when you create your character, you go around to the table, everyone presents their character, and then you ask each other questions. It's actually a built-in system to say, all right.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I was shot in the stomach and lying bleeding on the ground. Which one of you assholes didn't help me?
Ooh, me.
Exactly. So that means
I held the gun. I helped start the situation, man.
Yeah. And these kind of questions actually, first of all, it helps you get an understanding of each other. But there's actually an in-game system that like, okay, we don't have that good of a relationship, so we don't work well together. And that's the first time I've seen that kind of stuff going on.
That is actually a very interesting way of putting it. That could actually be something I would prefer
in every
the
game.
Future.
Yeah.
For any role-play session, like just have these simple things that has happened in this group.
Yeah,
I think that is one of the reasons there is a real great thing about making characters together, because when I do, you can really, as a storyteller or a player, just see that, oh, that NPC that you're creating in your background for your player, that could really be me, or that cousin that you have, that could also be my cousin, or something. Just kind of tying things together, just creating like a net, depending what kind of connection, of course, you want in the gaming group.
Of course, you don't want to be that uncle that the person hated.
Of course you want to be that uncle. He has all the money.
Incidentally, you played someone's uncle, didn't you? In Varangia.
Well, that's yeah.
But let's not go back there.
Well, he started a revolution, man. He
did.
Changed your existence.
He was the face of the revolution.
Yeah.
And had no control over it.
How he wanted that, yes.
It was that guy.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
guy.
And Martin, your mention of a net here really brings up a good kind of symbolism if you think about how neurons work in your brain. A single neuron wouldn't do much. But when you have, for example, ice cream, it connects to sweetness. It connects to
ice cream of all things.
Yeah, maybe I use this as an example of explaining this to children. Like an ice cream is sweet, it's cold, it's during the summer, it's with your family. All these connections make ice cream a very important neuron in your head.
Yes, watch out, you have diabetes.
Diabetes, a later addition to this neural network.
Well, other networks, when we were talking about Session 0 and character creation, is besides the traits, the merits and flaws, the talking between players, is the NPCs.
Yeah.
One thing most game masters I've been playing with kind of forget is players can choose to create NPCs or not. If they don't, well, they're going to evolve some eventually. But those players do, they tend to put some effort and thought into it, and the game master can read that in... Say that you're creating a mechanic and a clergyman or something like that, then I know what you think is relevant to the game. You've created those guys not because I need someone to buy guns from or something, shit like that. You create them because you feel they are needed at a most often subconscious level.
Yeah.
So it's another way to read both your players and the game you're going to be playing.
And different games tackle that differently. For example, Dungeons and Dragons is a very shallow game in that regard, in my opinion, because it doesn't touch too much on your character's past. 5th edition is working there, it's getting there.
Well,
World of Darkness games, they actually have background points specifically for generating allies.
Well, you can be really badass and very alone, and you're gonna die alone.
And then you have games like Eon, And how did they handle stuff like that?
Huge family that burns to death.
It was one time, okay?
Twice,
You were
man.
not even there. You
No,
stop me.
it's the sad thing.
We must leave this now. You'll just
was
have to
te-
settle it with fish hooks on the roof tomorrow.
This was 12 years ago,
It
man.
still hurts, man.
The downside of playing in the
so-
same group.
No, but
It was the best thing ever.
There is a possibility to create just in Eon, for example, you have a lot of tables and everything, and you can roll it and everything. But the point I'm coming to, and which I think is really interesting in my way of actually creating the world and then acting in it, is that you could really use such systems to create also NPCs which differs from those that Daniel talked about. You can create NPCs that does not have any thematic effect on the campaign, and you might ask yourself, why would I then do it? Because I think that if you do it right, you can also create a living life, a feeling that there is a life going on, and you're right now in something else, or just this is a part of your life. So I always try to during my actual gaming sessions, if I'm the storyteller, I try to have one specific little plot going on for each and every one of the player characters that isn't connected to the main story, just to keep them connected in their other life. And this also creates situations where they have to choose and make a choice. Do I prioritize the things for the group or the things that are for me? Or could I combine them? And this creates tension in the group, and or otherwise tension in the character itself. But of course, you shouldn't just create a lot of NPCs that just lies there and does nothing. And as Daniel says, there's the ones that the players themselves flesh out. That is the ones that Daniel were talking about, the ones that they feel really should be important. So you have to kind of, as Daniel said, really kind of just look at it and think. Just think one step more. What does this mean?
And honestly, did you really care about all 14 of those?
He's talking about my character's family, that he spent the entire existence, life, and everything, including exile from court, just to try to help.
Avenge.
Yeah, no, you put in your one piece of effort. You burned the house down with them inside.
But I think
It's easier for you to not think of them if they don't exist.
that's true. That's true.
Oh my God, there are no strings. I never thought about that.
But I think I think it's also important that you don't put too much work into this, because if you think, for example, we've had a period of playing when we had these long lists of questions. We're talking hundreds of questions. Actually, I think at one point.
Well, some A4s filled with text.
Yeah.
Just
And I think to some degree they get a bit limiting if you fill them out in the beginning of the game, because you don't really know your character. You haven't played them. And I think that's an important aspect of it too. It's very hard to predict how a character is going to evolve and how you're going to play them the first time, because you have all these numbers and you have all these flaws and merits, and then you have to interpret it. And the actual act of interpreting the character might result in something. Either you can't, you're unable to roleplay this character, or you realize that there's something about this character that just isn't going to work with the group. You can help mitigate this by session 0, but I've found many times that I've played a character 1 or 2 sessions, and then I just went, no, doesn't work. I can't play this character. Their motivation isn't strong enough, or they're too different from the group.
there's something lacking.
Yeah. And by then, if you fill out all these questions, you can always save the character for another time. That's the thing you can.
They make great NPCs.
A very good point. Very good point.
You should always keep characters you create that is for NPC purposes, not perhaps in the same game, but I mean, good characters. I mean, they're good.
They don't
Use
grow
them.
on trees.
No, damn no.
I mean, more than half of your NPCs are old PCs, right, Martin?
Yeah,
Sure.
and I've stolen them from all you guys. So
No.
Except in Neon, because then you roll a dry and then a huge tree comes out.
Yeah. They grow into a tree, but they
Yes.
don't grow on trees. No, I think you're correct, and I know that I am the man with the list of questions.
You've been good. You've been
Okay,
good.
because I had at the most time I had like 2 papers filled with questions. I trimmed those down now, and I moved them to like the 3rd or 4th session. But I do think that the times that when I really have connected the most with my own player characters is when I've taken such a list of questions, and then I put myself in the shoes of the characters, so to say, like going in character, and then I have answered those questions as the character would answer them myself. Sometimes I've answered the questions with a threat, like, how dare you ask me that? Or just kind of go into and just being in your character and try to answer this. Because a lot of the times the answer itself is less revealing than how you choose to answer it.
Yeah.
and that is a very good way to get in depth with your character. I mean, when you as a player or game master in some times, you sit down and you just act out the character, and you're thinking deep in your mind, why is he doing this? It is a horrible person. Stop this! But you can't help it. The character just flows out and goes on doing what the character should, being the character.
It's yeah. I mean, these kind of questions, I feel like a lot of times they're maybe not relevant to the character at hand, but I mean, you can't play a character well unless you know them well. Because I've also found that when you don't answer these questions, slowly, the character kind of mutates into you. And then you're just playing yourself. I don't know if that's a problem I have.
No,
only,
you're
but
not
That's how
alone.
you're supposed to play. You're supposed to play yourself as awesome.
yeah, and
the
take everything
Ubermensch.
personally. Like,
Yes.
every kind of resistance is going to be like, oh, you don't like me, is that it?
Oh, yeah.
I may
Well,
have
that-
some issues with that.
Well, that actually opens up to the main thing we learned about all these questions from when we did them. That the main thing you need to know about your character or any character is what makes them not perfect, and build on that.
Oh, yeah.
You need to find the thing that he uses or she uses or it uses to struggle to not stay at home. The reason why it's not okay to do certain things, why it's like dumb or ugly or weak or poor. What is the reason behind that?
I don't want to play myself.
No. Well,
I play role-playing games
Hey.
to not be myself.
Oh, yes.
you have no legs. Go with that or something.
Yeah.
No, but you use those things. They make part of your history. They accentuate why you do things, especially in a certain way.
And just when you bring that up, because there's a lot of people just, and I think just oftentimes you play role-playing games to just do something great, because that's fun. But I also think it's there can be a different kind. Just you could play just as flawed as you are in real life, but you can act upon that in a completely different way, and that is just another way to gain the exact same freedom as being someone completely different.
Yeah.
You could just take the steps that you yourself, sometimes maybe you have felt like it for a short while before your brain tells you that that's a stupid idea.
Yeah. It's very hard to unlearn your own behavior pattern, and I feel like a lot of the greatest moments in my role playing experiences have always been when I've made decisions that I myself wouldn't have made. Like, for example, we mentioned how my character in Varangia sort of just backstabbed her former apprentice and sacrificed her to the cannibals, if you remember.
God damn it.
That decision really hurt. Because, first of all, it was another player. I saw them... I saw their expression while
It
this
was
going.
glorious.
But
I remember now.
it felt really in character. And she was the kind of person who made a decision and stuck with it. She never questioned her own gut feeling. And I consistently questioned myself. So it was a very tough decision to make.
You're
Very
a
hard.
very self-criticizing person, so to say.
Thank you
The
for
same
pointing that
with me.
out for all our listeners.
No.
yeah.
The same for me. I
yeah.
criticize
Yeah.
a lot of what I
Well,
do.
we could say all this, but we say it in a simple way to all you others out there. if you don't create a character that fails, how can you ever succeed? How can you ever feel that? Try to create a character that's best at everything and never fails. See how long you want to play that asshole. Or create a cripple that manages to find a cure and start walking again.
It's really boring to be the one who always
The
gets
fated one.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's more fun to play the guy who the fates come and says, all right, you're a stupid asshole, but you're the one fated to rule the world, and we're gonna make sure you damn well do it.
Yeah, because I really think that the greatest kind of drama is, as you said, struggle through great odds, or really just falling from great height.
Thank you for saying that in much better words.
But I think it's also important, and I think we might have strayed a little bit away from the subject of Session Zero here, but I think it's also really important if you're bringing in new players to kind of take this one session, even if the rest of you are working well together, to make sure that you don't just throw in a player, because there's all these, and I'm, in lack of better terms, I'm going to call them memes. In a group.
No, the first taste is free.
Yeah, but you have all these recurring jokes, for example, in a campaign. You have all these recurring NPCs, and it's very important that a person can feel a part of this. For example, we had Thomas Himmelsklinga, which was a friend of ours character, who was in one of the initial campaigns of Eon, and he was this boisterous, drinking, womanizing knight that was just being a knight out of spite for his dad, I think, if I recall correctly. And he became a saint when he died.
What?
And this was just a recurring thing. Everyone just laughed at this
PR,
idea that
all
this
PR.
guy, the least suitable out of this group, the one I would have never picked as a saint, became the saint.
We would just have to say that he was canonized for political reasons.
Canonized, as in
Made into sainthood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I always think of a canon.
Sorry.
Well, you have to know that he was the only character not from the same nation, so, relations with another nation.
It was definitely political.
Okay.
But these kind of things, in a group, they really take their own life. They don't know that came out really weird. They take on their own lives. And I think it's very important in any kind of group that this kind of culture is passed on or shown. Of course, you don't say, okay, you have to follow our indoctrination. This is how it has to be. But it's a bit overwhelming to be a new player in a group.
You need to understand references to make your own decisions, what you think about them. Because if you don't understand, you don't know how to react.
Yeah.
And for the new players, a session zero is the way to realize that you don't have to succeed all the time. That you can do certain jokes. You should learn a bit of the lingo, a bit of the game, and. Well, you understand what other players are, what the world is, everything that's needed.
And I think if we can go back to the Dungeons and Dragons and Eon comparison.
All right.
Fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons have actually included background stuff like how you became a village hero, or what kind of merchant you were previously, and what your ideals are, motivations, which is a huge step for this series of games.
So how long? Or rather, how old is Dungeons and Dragons?
40 years, I think.
Well, it learned.
And it sounds really harsh, but I'd like to say that a system that doesn't actively make their players do these kind of decisions is a system that doesn't focus on role-playing, because you can always complement it with your own role-playing stuff. But with Eon, you're supposed to roll out these background rolls. You're supposed to... you're not supposed to roll your morale, but there are actually stats for your greed... or actually not your greed, your
anger,
your anger,
loyalty,
your
honor,
lust, your loyalty, your camaraderie, your faith,
generosity.
Generosity. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. You can roll these stats out, and I think that's such a great way. You can, of course, pick them up yourself if you don't want to roll it.
Yeah.
But it really is something to lean back on, and it really helps you in session zero to go, all right, so I rolled that. I have camaraderie very low, and I nearly drowned. So perhaps that influenced me in some way that, okay, nobody's going to help me when I'm almost drowned, so that's going to help shape my character. It provides you with all these ways of developing your character.
You learn to swim.
Yeah. Exactly. Even being kicked by a horse, which is one of the things that you can have been. You have a healthy dislike for horses. that's something to play on, and something for the other people to sort of connect in this net with your character.
Well, there is a difference though between the background, the time you spend on the backgrounds in Dungeons and Dragons and Eon, for example. I mean, in Dungeons and Dragons, it's a game made for strange kooky characters to be thrown together in a group and just go out and do stuff.
Adventure,
in Eon, if you don't flesh out anything, it's a world made to be fleshed out. If you don't put in the time, you will be no one who knows no one, and your game session will be much more boring.
Yeah. I guess Eon can be more compared to a Rollmaster in that regard, although Rollmaster is extremely more heavy in rules.
But we have to say that those two games are Dungeons and Dragons and Eon. They are on different sides of the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
I mean, both are good in their way.
Oh yeah.
You just need to know.
I don't mean to say that Dungeons and Dragons is a bad game.
I never believed you would. No. It's more like, in the beginning, for a session zero, know what kind of game you want to play. Yeah. That is the step one. If you don't know it, I mean, say you want to go into space, you want to play knights and ladies, of course, pick whatever you want. Then pick the kind of game. Do we want a deep backstory? Yeah. There are games for that. Do we want someone who just swings the sword? We have games for that.
Yeah. Which is also why Session Zero is so important. If half of the group wants one thing and the other half doesn't want that or wants something else, you're going to have a lot of conflict between the players.
Yeah.
Or tension, rather.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a good way there's a good reason for a storyteller kind of to put down your feet a bit there, and just say that, because players they have a lot of imagination, but still they're kind of, even if I said that everyone had a responsibility, they're still kind of counting on you to actually kind of spin the game.
Yeah.
And you have to be, I think, very realistic about what could you manage and what would you as a storyteller think is fun, because I think there's a lot of things I've said is most important. So what are the most important things? If the storyteller loves the story that is trying to tell, mostly the characters will love it as well. But if the storyteller if it's an effort, then it's not fun for the players either. No. So you have to say, like, I, as a storyteller, I really do like these things. Do you want to be with me on those? And then people can just kind of add a bit or subtract a bit. But you can't just, you can't pander to everyone at the same time. It's not going to work.
But I think if you work this way, and you also are very clear what kind of games you want to play, and it's more of a cooperative effort, then being a storyteller isn't that big of a deal, and more people in the group can storytell because you're creating it together. And maybe this guy is more okay with storytelling, lots of combat, or this girl is more okay with storytelling, more social interaction, and maybe they can storytell that game then, which is another thing you would find out in Session Zero. So if you go to a con, which is common in America, you go to conventions and you can just play a game of pick up Dungeons and Dragons. It can be a super great game. It can be a terrible game because you don't have the time for Session Zero. You just sit down and that I experienced that on a con at PAX. I think I mentioned this previously, how I sat down for a game of like 1 hour Dungeons and Dragons, and they were actually annoyed with me because I was very descriptive in how my character behaved and what I did.
And that is probably a lot. Isn't that a big difference between how, well, we've all here played a lot of like story-based role-playing games.
Yeah, the difference is, I think, not. I was about to say maturity, but perhaps not that. I mean, we've all gathered around here and through the years because we enjoy one certain kind of game more than the other. I mean, a simple hack and slash session, fine, we can do that sometimes. Yeah. But to really enjoy ourselves, we need the Session Zero to prove that, well, not to prove, to show that we need the social interactions, we need the plot lines, we need the family, the relatives, the NPCs, everything. We need a world to care about.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's the same when you play a computer game or something like that. You need immersion.
Yeah, because if you're just gonna torch building with people's families that you don't care about,
Why bring that
there's-
up again?
there's no one that's going to scream.
This wound is never going to
have the
close.
Damn you.
angst. And I want the angst.
And the best
love
part
it.
is my character, I don't even think he knew who he was killing.
You didn't care?
No.
You just a random act of violence?
Dude, this was the... Oh, God. We're not going to talk about that character.
We are later at some other point.
Absolutely. But if anyone was going to burn down the house with people he didn't know about, this was the guy.
Yeah.
He took horse tranquilizers to be able to function socially.
What? Oh, right.
He had an
you
intelligence.
told me.
He had an
Actually, an
intelligence score of
awesome guy.
22. He was not okay.
I actually remember this guy
Yeah.
now. So
was
you know
awesome.
what? One of these podcasts, we're gonna have a session
Yeah.
where we talk about one of our favorite characters.
Oh my God. Yeah. We should do that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
And all the bad things we remember them doing.
I mean, Edward was a perfect character.
So let's just not get ahead of ourselves with that session. So
Just say we're gonna give you, well, what is a teaser that, well, if you like dresses, don't bring him to a party. He rips
No.
them off.
Oh my God.
And on that note,
Notes?
I think we should end the podcast here.
Probably. Session 0 is important. Play it.
Yeah, session 0 is important. Game masters, make sure you tell the players what kind of world you want, otherwise it's never gonna go well.
No.
play. Just play, goddammit. Play.
Everyone was just staring at Martin, expectantly like,
Yeah,
what's he
where's the
gonna
words of wisdom?
say? Yeah. All right. Until next time, then. Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
Thank you for listening to Swede Rolls. Your support means the world to us. The music you heard playing at the start and the end of this episode is Fireside Tales by Darren Curtis. The intent of this podcast is to discuss themes and issues in all manner of gaming, but primarily focused on the RPG genre. If you have any comments or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Pay us a visit at swederolls.com, where you can also learn about the people doing this podcast and more. For our Let's Play channel, check us out at youtube.com/Swede_fighters. And until next time, keep rolling.